With a pile of DC heroes and villains arriving on the small screen, it's time for a Geek Crash Course on the new allies and enemies of Arrow and the Flash. I'm Michael Nixon, and this is Geek Crash Course West. We've already covered the basics of the comics versions of Green Arrow, Black Canary, and the Flash in previous Geek Crash Course episodes, but some might need a quick primer on the CW series. First, let's catch up with Arrow, and yes, this is a show called Geek Crash Course. We're not going to be doing a comprehensive list here, and part of the term Crash Course is that there are going to be some spoilers, so spoilers. Anyway, Arrow is Oliver Queen, trapped on a hellish island called Lian Yu, or Purgatory, for 5 years before returning to Starling City. While on the island, he managed to become an expert Arrow guy, and managed to make a few allies and enemies who pop up again after his return to Starling. Season 1 was a building year, filling in the details of the island in flashback, including people like Ally Archer Shadow and Special Ops soldier Slade Wilson. On the Starling side, in present day, Ollie makes allies in former soldier and bodyguard Diggle and tech wizard Felicity, forming the so-called Team Arrow and battling various threats to Starling, including a certain Dark Archer as the big bad. Over the course of Season 1, Ollie remains a killer, earning the ire of Detective Quentin Lance and his daughter, Ollie's former love interest, Laurel Lance. Season 2 built on the foundations of Season 1, fleshing out a more comic book-influenced world, with Ollie rejecting killing and Team Arrow growing to include Black Canary, Sarah Lance, Laurel's sister, and other Ollie love interest, along with Ollie's burgeoning protege, Roy Harper. The team works together to battle the forces of Slade Wilson, driven mad on the island by a super steroid called Mirakuru, and who seeks revenge on the man who jammed an arrow through his eye, Oliver Queen. Team Arrow is also briefly joined by Barry Allen, a forensic scientist from Central City. After Allen returns to Central City, he's struck by a particle accelerator-generated bolt of lightning that's part of a larger super science storm that changes more than just Barry. But spoilers for a show that hasn't aired yet. Barry is spinning, or running, off into his own series, The Flash, which looks like it'll take on the Freak of the Week aspects of Smallville that Arrow has avoided in favor of a darker feel. I say this is a positive, say what you will about Smallville, but the procedural format really works for superheroes. That's kind of how comics work. Plus, cop stuff, it makes sense, right? Who else from the pages of DC Comics can we expect to join the world of television? We'll find out after I get a breather and a beverage. Arrow actor John Barrowman, who plays Malcolm Merlyn in the series, is one of two big guest stars from the world of Doctor Who. The other, Alex Kingston, who plays the mother of the Black Canary, Dinah Lance. Arrow and the Flash won't just feature their title heroes, with a bevy of DC Comics characters making their way to the small screen across the two shows, including Roy Harper's upgrade to the superhero identity of Arsenal, one of many superhero names he's had in his comic book history. Other arriving heroes include Katana, Tatsu Yamashiro, an expert swordswoman who wields a sword that may or may not house the soul of her dead husband, Maseo, depending on the comic book backstory that the Arrow team decides to use. The Atom, Ray Palmer, a scientist who creates a lens out of a white dwarf fragment that allows him to shift size. In comics, Palmer is the second in a long line of atoms, which includes the original World War II-era hero Al Pratt, scientist Ryan Choi, and recent addition Rhonda Pineda, who keeps a dark secret. Wildcat, Ted Grant, an irascible, brawling boxer who, in comics, is a member of World War II-era hero team the Justice Society of America. In some continuities, Wildcat trains other heroes in his fighting skills, including the Black Canary. Manhunter, public defender Mark Shaw, who resorts to vigilantism to punish criminals who escape by gaming the legal system. Manhunter is another character with a long line of reinventions, revisions, and various versions, so you know. Francisco Ramon, aka Vibe, is actually an ensemble character on The Flash, his origin revised from being a gang leader to being a scientist at Star Labs who helps Barry in his TV adventures. In the comics, he's a metahuman, someone with superpowers. His power is that he can generate sonic vibrations and seismic events, but the TV version hasn't shown either ability, yet. Firestorm, who is actually two people fused together due to a science experiment gone awry. One half is the body and holds incredible atomic powers along with an explosive hairdo, and the other is a sort of extra mind disembodied within and advising the host in mental conversation. The original Firestorm was the combination of student-athlete Ronnie Raymond and the mind of Nobel Prize-winning physicist Dr. Martin Stein, but the concept has evolved massively over the years, including alternative hosts, fire elementals, and god particles. It's been revealed via press releases that at least the Ronnie Raymond half of Firestorm will appear in The Flash, and that his disappearance and return will be connected to the Star Labs science storm that gave Barry Allen his super speed powers. Plus, there have probably been a bunch of other heroes announced since I shot this. research. Woo! Arrow Season 3 Big Bad is a returning Malcolm Merlyn, a mad businessman trained by the League of Assassins. He's training up Thea, aka Speedy, Oliver's sister, and Roy's love interest, and Malcolm's daughter, since we're going full spoilage here. There's also been the news that the League of Assassins will return, this time with Ra's al Ghul on the scene. Ra's has been mentioned a few times in the show, but this will be the first time he's actually appearing. For Ra's fans, they use Raz and Ra's interchangeably like tomato, tomato. It's actually not the worst way to go about it. The actor playing Ronnie Raymond, aka Firestorm on The Flash, Robbie Amell, is actually the cousin of Arrow lead actor Stephen Amell. A lot of you aren't going to believe me on this, I get that, but I think you should watch Arrow. Season 1 is very much a building year, just sort of putting pieces on the table, but Series 2 is where I think the game really begins, with the show veering away from that sort of Nolan Batverse darkness feel, and into something a bit more purely comic book and adaptation-y. I'm not a huge grim and gritty guy, just to be clear, so if you like your heroes sort of shouty and aggro, the show might lose you after Season 1. But I think Season 2 builds something a bit more purely comic book. Again, I really like that about it. In terms of capturing that sort of comic book nature, I also think the Flash pilot, and yes, I have seen the Flash pilot, is a really good sort of take on it. The characters, while sometimes just sort of info dumping their histories, are pretty well drawn and could lead to some interesting comic booky stuff. Also, the sort of meta-human concept is kind of a great idea. Anyway, big superhero fans who are just watching this show to kind of check in, what are your favorite stories for some of the heroes I've mentioned in this week's episode? I'm curious. We may disagree. That's kind of how opinions work, Let me know in the comments below, and let's help out the people who might not necessarily know everything about the characters I talked about this week. The upcoming Flash series will actually be the character's second live-action series. The first, which aired in the 1990s, starred John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen. Shipp will be appearing in the new Flash series as Barry's father. Alright, let's keep that superhero conversation going in the comments below. And if you don't subscribe to Geek Crash Course, you have failed this city! Not really, it's a thing he says in the show. Don't worry about it. You're fine. You're fine. But if you do have any questions, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and our website, geekcrashcourse.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time on Geek Crash Course West.